you, everybody, for waiting so patiently for us to get back out here. At this point, we're going to skip over our joint meeting with the Board of Health. This meeting will be postponed. No. That meeting will be postponed until March 24th due to availability problems. We were scheduled to have a brief meeting with Jeff Dodds based on our last meeting to discuss 360 reviews. At this point, we're going to pass over it because Mr. Dodds was on a time schedule and we didn't get out in time to meet with him. So
but he is willing to help.
He is willing to help, and he will come back with us to let us know what's going on. Next, we will meet with Eversource, formerly Western Mass Electric Company, and the representatives here are here to review some work to be done on Coleman and Gun Road. They're going to give us a brief presentation regarding the work that needs to be done in the months ahead. Yep, please do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you to the chairperson and the select board for allowing us to present here this evening. My name is Haley Dunn. I'm with the community relations at Eversource Energy. You may know us formerly known as Western Mass Electric Company. We changed our name about a month and a half ago, so now we are one company known as Eversource Energy. We are here this evening to talk about a project that we will be undergoing over the next year or so. It's a project to enhance our reliability for our customers in Easthampton, Southampton, and Westhampton. The project will mainly be focused on out of the Gun Road substation, which is located on Phelps Street, Easthampton. But there will be work done around Coleman Road and Gun Road as well. So I'm joined here by my colleagues, Dan Lewis, who is a senior engineer, Ken Garber, who is an account executive for the town of Southampton, Jerry Mulangowski, who is a project specialist, and Calvin Layton back here, who is our chief arborist for Eversource Energy. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Lewis, who will just talk about the project scope, and of course, we'll answer any questions that you folks may have.
Thank you. Do we have the same map here?
Yeah, we have the same.
Okay.
So as you can get the image at home. Good evening. As Haley mentioned, we're here to give a brief overview of the project we're proposing to do. I'm going to start by just kind of orienting you on our existing circuitry in the area. So you each have a handout with some maps. The first page of the maps is the same as what's on the easel here. It's very small print. Don't worry that you can't read any of the street names. It's just really a kind of a high-level map so we can show you the overall picture. So what's shown on this map is the area that's served by Gun Substation, which is, as Haley mentioned, located on Phelps Street and at the intersection of Gun Road and Lion Street in Easthampton, right on the border with Southampton. And that substation has 3 circuits that come out of it right now, and they serve about 10,900 customers in total in the towns of Southampton, Westhampton, and Easthampton. And this map shows those towns. The 3 circuits that are shown on the map are in different colors. If you'll notice, the green circuit comes out of Gun Substation and heads south along County Road, and then over west on East Street toward College Highway, and that's the circuit that supplies just about all of Southampton. When it gets to College Highway, it splits and goes up north toward Pomeroy Meadow Road and toward the Big Y Plaza on the town line. It also heads south from there to Fulmer Road and toward Montgomery. Two other circuits, the blue circuit that kind of heads to the north out of Gun Substation goes to South Street and heads out toward Westhampton along Loudville Road. And then the circuit shown in red goes to the northeast out toward the center of Easthampton. And what we're here to talk about tonight is that the electric load that's being supplied by these three circuits has increased recently, and it's now at the point where if we have an outage on one of the circuits toward close to the substation, when that occurs, we typically try to isolate that problem and then feed the rest of the customers that are without power from an adjacent circuit. And the loads are now to the point where if we try to do that during the hottest days of the year in the summer, the circuit that we're using to pick up the customers would be right at its limit and potentially overload. So in order to do that, in order to solve that problem, we need to add a fourth circuit to the substation.
Okay.
I think, Ken, now if we could just transition to the other diagram. Before I do that, though, if you notice the dotted rectangle here, this area, the second diagram is just a blow-up of that area. And it'll show in more detail where the work is going to take place. So sort of in the middle of the diagram, you'll see where Gun Substation is labeled here. What we're proposing to do is, by adding the fourth circuit, is to come out on Gun Road, just across the street from the substation, and follow that road up to where it intersects with Coleman Road, and then follow Coleman Road until it gets to College Highway. And what we would need to do in that area is replace all of the existing poles that are on that street. I don't know if it's all the poles, or there's about 25 poles in total.
On Gun Road, we're looking to relocate 4 poles, or reposition 4 poles just westerly of Pleasant Street. And then where we take the corner to go onto Coleman Road, the span lengths are within our limits, but the poles themselves are undersized height-wise. So we'd be looking to change approximately 22 poles, existing pole locations to slightly higher poles, and reposition 1 pole at the beginning of Coleman Road. And we have submitted petitions to the town, and there is a hearing scheduled for the repositioning of the poles on Gun Road and the 1 pole on Coleman Road, and that hearing is scheduled for the 24th.
Okay.
You say slightly taller. How tall are the poles now, and how tall are the new ones?
The existing poles that are there are mostly 40-foot high, and that's the nominal length. That does not include the depth that they're set in the ground. That a 40-foot pole is typically 6 feet approximately in the ground. The new poles that we would be putting in would be 5 feet higher nominally, so 45 feet. So approximately 5 feet higher at the top of the pole. Some of the existing poles that are on Coleman are only 35 foot, so those obviously would be 10 feet higher.
Is there a reason to put higher poles?
Yes, because, and Dan will add to this, but the circuitry that's there now is only a single-phase circuit. And being a feeder circuit, that needs to be 3 phases. And the conductor size goes up from the single phase that's there, so it's a larger wire. And instead of having 1 primary conductor, we'll have 3, so it's added weight. So the poles need to be, higher for the length of the spans, and also, the fact that you're putting, multiple conductors.
So higher is stronger, you're saying?
Well, no, the pole side diameter is slightly larger than the existing there for the single phase. But it also, it is the fact that we have 3 wires on the pole top instead of 1. And this wire being a larger diameter would sag the single.
So you want to put height between that and the ground?
Yes, because we have to maintain clearance above the road and clearance between our conductors on the pole top.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. So as Jerry mentioned, the conductors and the poles would be upgraded along the stretch of Gunn Road and Coleman Road. And once that work was complete, we would, at that point, that's the extent of the major work we'd be doing. And the other work we'd be doing would be changing open points on existing circuits to change the size of the circuits and redistribute the loads so that the loads on the circuits that exist today would be lower. In essence, what would result is this new circuit that comes out on Coleman Road would now feed out into Westhampton, and it would also feed part of Pomeroy Meadow Road between Loudville Road and College Highway. So rather than the entire town of Southampton being served by the one circuit, which was green on the original map, this section of town would be served by the new circuit. In addition to that, the customers along Coleman and Gunn Road, and then also, trying to remember the name of that other street, Pleasant Street, I think it is?
Yes.
That comes from East Street. That whole area would also be served by the new circuit. So it adds a level of redundancy to the supply so that not all of the customers in town are supplied by one circuit.
When you look at our town, and you must have looked into not only this problem, but some of the other problems in town, is there any other distribution problems that you're seeing in town that you have to address in the next 5 years or so, that, you know, with the growth that's going on in town, you see this change will cover the new homes being built for the next 5-10 years, or is there going to be a greater need?
When you say problems, you're referring to load. Will this solve the load problems in the area? I believe it solves the load problems in the area. Yeah, this addition is the only upgrade work we foresee in terms of new circuitry to relieve load growth. We have a 10-year planning horizon, and this should get us through that 10-year planning horizon, unless there's some new load that we don't foresee coming, major load that comes into the area.
On a percentage basis, how much above the existing load are you covering? So like you're building some reserve, is it 20% more, 25% more? Just how much more of an upgrade really is it in the percentage-wise?
It's a little difficult to answer that exact question, because what we typically deal with is each individual circuit has to be able to carry another circuit when we lose one. So we actually are building for a contingency, for a problem that we have to be able to supply the system when there's a problem on another circuit. So when you just individually look at individual circuits and how much they're capable of, they're usually capable of much more than they're carrying at any given time.
Thank you.
Is there an increase in voltage?
No, the voltage is still the same. This entire area is the same voltage that it has been for years.
Which is?
23 kV. Yep.
Are there any other questions from the board? Does this cause any disturbance when you do all this to the residents? I mean, I happen to live on Pleasant Street, so am I going to lose any power for any amount of time?
I don't anticipate any interruptions in power for the work we're doing in this area. There'll be, traffic flow might be affected when trucks are working and whatnot, but the power should stay on.
And have you done an estimate of how many trees you're going to take down with this new poles? I know you're going to trim branches, but I'm sure there's trees you're taking down.
Yeah, I'll refer to, we have Calvin Layton in the room. He's our arborist, and he and Jerry, who had spoken earlier, have been out there to look at some of it. I'm not sure if they have all the answers yet, but they might be.
You're going to anticipate a tree hearing, right?
How do they notify on the poll hearing? Do they notify the abutters or just?
No, it's,
And
they run
For
a-
town trees, we have to follow Chapter 87, which requires a hearing. So if there are town trees involved, we would, if they are a healthy tree, then we would follow that process and have a hearing. If it's a tree that's diseased or defective, it can be condemned by the town tree warden. in that case. So at this point, we're probably only looking at several trees. Most of the trees that will be affected will probably be private trees, and we have a permissions plan where we go through and permission with each landowner the work that we'll do on their trees. We don't anticipate a lot of removals on this project, unless while we go through, one of the things we do is examine the current trees on the street to see of their relative health. So if we discover trees that are deceased or defective or have some kind of an issue, then we'd approach the landowners and offer to take those trees down. It'll give the added security of the circuit of not building a new circuit and have a tree take it to the ground the next week. So we will review all the trees on the project to make sure that we're in good shape. We did do a fairly large tree removal program last year in Southampton. We did 35, 40 trees that we took down, and so we're constantly working on that part of it anyway. So.
What rights does a private landowner have if a tree is on his or her property? They want to, pardon?
They need to work out a deal with each individual.
But if they say, no, I want to keep it?
They have to work it out.
Okay, so you'd work it out with the individual homeowner?
Correct.
Okay.
That's right. We have a permissions process. We go through, go over the options, talk with them, figure it out, and we usually come to some kind of, resolution to those issues. I've never really had too many problems, so don't expect it here.
Okay,
Thank you.
One question I have is, and it has affected where I live, but I know back in the 70s, you put a lot of aluminum underground buried cable. Any of these cable streets that you come in contact with, are you going to replace any of that aluminum ground wire? Like Johnson Judd, which has been a nightmare?
I don't, for the work we're doing here, it'll be all overhead work, and we're not really coming in contact with any underground cables in the area we're working.
I know there was a lot of aluminum ground wire put in the 70s in Southampton.
Yeah, underground cable that feeds
And
neighborhoods, yeah.
It's seen better days, and I didn't know if you were planning on taking care of any of that when you go buy them.
Right, not as part of this project, but we do monitor the performance of those areas, and when they have more than an acceptable level of outages in, say, a 1 or 2 year period, we have a process where we either can inject them with a silicone insulation that basically rejuvenates them to their original capacity, or we'll just replace them if that's the appropriate thing to do.
Okay.
Jackie?
Yeah, I have a question about the timeline. You have here June until the end of the year on Gun Road and Coleman Road. Is it going to be very noisy? I mean, disrupt, as Liz had alluded to, the neighbors, and how is that going to play out?
Yeah, that's a pretty wide timeline, and I would anticipate that the work's not going to be taking place continuously every day for that entire length of time. We don't have the exact schedule laid out, but it would be, we know our crews can start working there in June, and we want them to finish by the end of the year. And it may be shorter than that if they're able to put more crews on the job. If there's fewer crews on the job, it would take them longer. So I'm not anticipating that there'd be people out there every day for 6 months. When they're out there, though, I think the level of noise would not be excessive. I mean, there's noise when the bucket trucks are idling to do work in the air, and there's going to be a little noise if the digger truck is augering a hole to put a pole in the ground. But I would say that's kind of a localized thing for each house, and then the truck moves down the road to another location. So any individual homeowner shouldn't experience that kind of noise for whatever level it is. It shouldn't be going on at that location for the entire time, if that makes sense.
Great.
Are there any other questions from the board regarding the project?
Yeah, on the Gun Road station, I know you got to cross Line Street. I know you got 3 cables under the road there. I know back about a year ago, December, you had a major problem out there. One of the cables, or 2 of the cables.
Failed. Yeah, we had a
Is
failure.
that going to be all upgraded too?
The cable that failed was upgraded for a portion and not the entire length back to the substation. We have a job scheduled to go out and survey that area as soon as the snow melts and figure out if it's appropriate to replace the existing cable on the existing circuit at the same time we build the new. If we have to dig a trench, we'll probably put enough conduit in so that we can do both.
Yeah, 'cause I think you had an extra one in there, too.
Yeah, and if there's an existing conduit in the ground already that runs the complete length, we would probably just use that conduit to install the new cable and not do anything with the
So
existing.
it's on your radar.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from the board?
No.
No. You don't need any direction from us, right? You're going to go ahead and do this regardless of what?
Well, they need the poll hearing, right?
I think the next step is a poll hearing that's scheduled for a future meeting.
Okay.
But this was just an effort to present the overall project, because the
Right.
poll hearing is really for specific polls. We just wanted to explain, why those polls would be being installed.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
And our contact information is on the info sheet.
Excellent. Thank you.
This is a good name, too.
I'll add it to the list.
At this point, I'm going to skip ahead to the 3 appointments that we have, because I know those people are waiting patiently to go home tonight, probably. So I'm going to move to 5.11, which is being postponed until March 24th because we didn't choose one earlier. The second one is an appointment to the Norris School Committee, which would be filled until May of 2015. We have Mrs. Christine Wright, who was appointed by the school committee at its last meeting, contingent upon the vote from this evening. So at this point, I would accept a motion to appoint Christine Wright in a temporary capacity until May 2015.
So move.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Do
Aye.
I get to see who Miss Christine Wright is
Mrs.
before I vote?
Christine Wright is right here.
Hi, how are you? Good.
If I'm not mistaken, I think she is going to run for the full-time position in May, which will be an excellent, excellent asset to the school committee,
Good luck.
if I could say so.
Are you-
By the way, it's a lot of work.
Are you, if I can ask, are you planning to talk to our finance committee to kind of get up to date on the finances of the school?
I just attended the
Okay.
last finance committee meeting.
I think that's an important connection to make, because we rely on you to look at the budget and advise us on that.
I think that Mrs. Wright goes to almost as many meetings as I do, even without this capacity.
But that she listen.
I'm pretty sure she's a very good listener.
Doing my homework.
Yes.
Great.
So we had a motion, we had a second. Did everyone vote? Aye.
All right.
All right.
Aye, thanks. Our next position is William Walden, who I don't think is in the room, to a temporary Board of Registrar member. A member of the Board of Registrars had resigned in December, and as a result, they were down to 3 registrars, which included the town clerk. And as the town clerk is running in this next election, she's unable to sign off her own nomination papers. The state elections office has recommended that a temporary appointment be made until a candidate can be selected by the Board of Registrars as a permanent member. And the Board of Registrars met and asked that William Walden be appointed as a temporary registrar.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Is there any questions here? For a second, questions?
Yes, any
Okay.
discussion?
Yes, is William Walden, I don't know him, has he been,
He was on a regional school committee for a while.
but he knows this and he wants to be on here?
I would assume so, given that
It
the,
hasn't been drafted, from my understanding.
no, I don't, I'm sure he's
So
met with
We're not
Heather.
sure then if he wants to be on this committee.
I would say that if he's on here, it's because he's spoken to Heather, but I could be wrong. I don't think so, that's generally how it goes, but
Heather Thorne?
she'll be back if you would like to postpone the vote.
Well, I just, with an assumption, and I think so, is, I hate to say it this way, but I think we need to know these things before we put our hands in the air. And
So we will come back to this, there's a
I
motion,
think we should know this before we put them on the agenda.
maybe Heather knows that answer, but I
We'll
don't.
just leave the vote as it is, and then we'll just.
well, there's a motion and a second, there is no vote. So we could table it until Heather gets back in the
I'll
room.
just abstain if,
No, that's fine, we can table it.
can we table it like this?
Yes. Open time for the public?
Going once, going twice.
So close. Mrs. Walunas,
Pamela Lunas, 298 College Highway.
can you move the microphone down, please? Thanks.
Did you get my email?
I did get your email. I have not responded, but I will.
Okay, so it's something that you will address the whole group.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Moving on, we have a piece, I'm just checking.
No, that was a little mystery thing.
Can you pass the PCFs down, Kevin? We have a PCF for Eric Loico as a part-time police officer. This was signed off by the Finance Committee and the PQB. He was an auxiliary officer, and the chief had a part-time officer move on, and so he's making this auxiliary officer a part-time officer. Is there a motion to sign?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Can you pass the town caucus warrant down? We had signed this at our last meeting, but this is a revised town caucus warrant. The clerk realized there was an omission. It's been corrected and is ready to be re-signed and posted.
That's it, huh?
I would accept a motion to sign the warrant for the annual town caucus.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No questions?
I guess not.
You have payroll warrants down there and bill warrants. If anyone hasn't had a chance to look at them, you can. Heather's not here for town administrator report, so she's going to get missed. Select board updates and liaison reports. I think I had told you I went to school committee. We talked about that. The new net school spending numbers should be in, but they haven't been revisited yet. PQB met, but I was unable to attend. Oh, master plan implementation meeting that we talked about is Wednesday, next Wednesday
Next
at
Wednesday?
6:30.
You're going to send me some information?
Yeah. Can I email that to you?
Can.
Wednesday at 6:30.
Next Wednesday, not tomorrow?
Next Wednesday at
Okay.
6:30.
Should be on the town
Won't be
website.
available.
That's okay. Finance committee, I got to one meeting, but having some, you did go to one, yeah. I'm just having some conflict between other commitments, so. Does anybody else have any updates or reports that they'd like to share?
No.
My committee hasn't met.
Department heads?
Just to update you, when I was at the Finance Committee meeting, the Board of Health was in there, they're looking for additional money for the Health Department, just make you aware of it. They're also looking, I believe, to increase the salary of the agent and additional expense money.
They did have that position rescored by the PQB last week. I don't know what the results of it were because I was not there.
I
But-
think the salary is slightly higher than what the town accounting currently makes.
Which is?
What's that?
After the
I think
position was
salary-
rescored, it's higher than what the town accountant currently makes.
And
By
the
a few cents.
town accountant is only around 37,000, I believe, right?
It's like 30-something.
So just, it will be a discussion piece going forward, so people are aware.
I think that's not, we don't need to make a comparison, we just need
No.
to look at it.
Right. Heather, I passed over you, but I enjoy you, so if you would like to come up.
We tabled the vote. so-
We did table a vote, so we tabled a vote on the appointment of William Walden to the temporary Board of Registrar members pending your answer to this question. Does William Walden want to be a temporary member of the Board of Registrars?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. We have our answer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can it be assumed if they're on the agenda to be appointed that they want the position moving forward?
Yes.
Okay.
So that means you've had conversations, okay.
That means I got confirmation this case from the town clerk.
Sounds
So do you have a town administrator report?
I do, I was listening. All right, so I just have a couple updates. Number one, budget update. A group of us met today in order to discuss net school spending. Myself, Vicki the accountant, Donna the treasurer, Cindy and Bobby from the school business administration. We pretty much went over net school spending as far as what Hampshire Regional, where we need to be and what it's going to be. More specifically, we spent a lot of time to go over net school spending for the other part of our budget, the part that includes Norris, charter schools, school choice, indirect costs for Norris,
Okay.
and Smith Voc. Thanks, Ed. That being the case, there's essentially 5 components, and we went through each of them. This year, based on calculations of the number of students who are currently enrolled in Smith Folk, as well as the number of students who are currently interested in Smith Folk, we went with the higher number. We could go down lower later, but at any time, all these students could end up going, so that's what we'd be on the books for. And that's about $905,538. That includes any special education requirements that any of them have been indicated as having. The next piece comes down to Liz, do you have a
Is
question?
that the net school spending number that you just gave me?
Nope, that's the number that we get to count towards Smith Vocational.
We did 800 something last year, but it was half of that,
The
right?
tuition actually went down a little bit, but we end up losing out because we don't have as many kids graduating as it would be nice to, and we have more kids
We
coming
budgeted-
in.
But didn't we budget like 800,000, but we ended up only spending 4? Is that about right?
No, we budgeted about 830,000 last year, give or take, and we ended up spending a little bit over 700 because a couple students didn't go.
I guess I'm just
So in the
asking for
same
the total
situ-
net school spending number.
So if the situation comes to the same and we know by the fall who's going and who's not going, at that point, we can do a transfer like we did this year and just
Okay.
keep it within the pot.
All right, cool.
The next piece is charter school. Charter school, we actually get the assessment based on the cherry sheet the charge based on the cherry sheet, and that's $23,317. The interesting thing is we actually get an assessment for charter school. The state helps kick back some money, and that's $4,264. We're only allowed to count the balance of that towards net school spending, so that comes to $19,053
$19,053 is what you can actually count towards net school spending.
for charter,
For
yes.
charter.
For choice, school choice, the students we send out who are choicing in other locations to a different school, different community, we have a charge on the cherry sheet of $54,887. Now, mind you, the school choice and the school charter numbers could change in the next couple of cherry sheet revisions as they do them, as more people approve the budgets and the like. The next piece is indirect costs. So we sat down and we went over, what do we consider indirect costs? There's a lot of things we need more research on and just more understanding of what it is and what it's comprised of. For instance, there's currently a charge to the schools that we contribute a certain amount of, or rather request a certain amount of funding for the library. So their question was, what makes up that number? I think it's about $11,000.
For the school library or for the town library?
No, for the town library. So they're trying to figure out, what's the case, what's actually being contributed to the school from the library. In other communities, it's much easier to understand. For instance, you have Williamsburg, who has a library across the street, but they don't have a school library, so their students walk across the street to use the library instead of the school library. So it's more straightforward. Same thing, they just want more details. I believe Ed used to submit every year as the highway superintendent, all the details of how much we spent on plowing the school area and money contributing to the school from the highway department, wages, expenses, etc. The current number for indirect spending at this point is the same number we used this year. It can change and it may go up, but we believe at a minimum it will be $765,140. What does that really mean? Well, it's not money that we're actually getting from anywhere or taking from anywhere, so to speak. It's simply money we have to spend anyway, and it contributes to the concept of net school spending.
Were Bobby and Cindy on board with that number?
They were the ones who,
Came up with the number?
yes, was the same number we used last year, and they both believe that, in fact, this will be at the low. It could go higher.
$765,140?
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Then what we did from there is we figured out what we were actually required to spend for net school spending. and
Wait, what
that's-
about Norris? What's that number?
Can I come back to it?
Sure.
So net school spending, we were actually required to spend this year, $5,452,968.
Hold on. $5,452,968.
So to figure out the minimum we need to spend on Norris, what we did was we added up Smith Vocational, Charter, Choice, indirect costs, and we subtracted it from the $5 million figure, and we came to what we have to spend as a minimum for Norris, and that's $3,708,350.
And what's Norris's current first draft budget?
Their first request is $3.9 million.
Oh, so we're in around the same ballpark.
So we did talk to them today, and they asked, what it looked like, what message they could take back, and we essentially said, at a minimum, it's going to be $3,708,350. Hopefully, we'd like to at least level fund from last year.
Which is what?
$3,789,014. but it's going to depend. The difference between what they requested and what they're required to have based on the net school spending calculation is $261,793. As of currently, when we last looked at our current revenue projections from last week, and we matched those with our current level funded numbers, with the exception of increasing fire for a second shift, and things like the schools already expecting them to go up. Currently, we're at a $138,000 deficit. So to be able to have this $261,000, it reduces our deficit so that there isn't one, and there's extra spending abilities. And by extra spending, I don't mean we're all going to pull out our wish lists and checkbooks and this is what we need, this is what we want, but we might be able to meet everything we need to level fund our budget for the most part.
So your first conversation about the budget is not awful.
Correct. Okay. So,
Level funding is not awful, is that? We're talking
Well,
about-
we're not having the initial conversation that we had last year.
Oh, yeah,
at this
absolutely,
time.
absolutely.
So
guess
where
is
we're
where
going
I'm
from
going
here
with
is
that.
we have a finance team meeting on Tuesday. We'll discuss more. We'll start putting the numbers into the revenue. Our next large budget meetings, our highway comes up on this Thursday at 6 PM. The fire department's budget is next Monday at 6 PM. The police department's budget is St. Patty's Day, Tuesday, the 17th, at 6 PM. I expect people to be especially smiley for that day. That being said, once we conclude all of the budget meetings, the next step, I think I alluded to this last week, was the finance team will start meeting and go over every individual unique budget itself to make sure that things aren't being asked for that aren't reasonable in the first place, and make sure they have what they need to function. Once we get all those numbers down to where they need to be on things, then we'll start plugging them in and seeing where we fall, and seeing if we have to make additional tweaks to the budget at that point. But please note that the numbers for the cherry sheet and everything else are still only preliminary. There's no word on when they can change.
Okay.
Question? Okay.
Yeah.
When you asked the departments to do their budget, did you ask them to do a level funded? I forget how you asked them.
We asked to do a dual, so we asked them to do a level funded and a -5%. So in the
Minus.
event that we became, the idea, say we had to do -1% from last year, we had the leeway to go in between and know that at that point, without having to meet with folks again, if we needed to reduce something, we knew where to reduce it from,
Okay, thanks.
based on the will of the department. Any more questions on that?
Nope.
Okay, as of right now, everyone else, all the minor departments have been scheduled for department budget meetings.
Okay.
The next comment I have is just very brief. Annual town reports. Most departments have turned them in. We're still hunting down some folks and some items. My goal is to try to get it together next week. I've got most of the preliminary stuff. It's just adding all the reports in. It's going to look different than last year. It's Times New Roman, size 12. It's all formatted the same. You don't see any letterheads in it. Everything actually looks very professional, and I think it's a nice piece to present to the town. I'm hoping to have it to the Board of Selectmen during next week, which is the off week, just so everyone can start looking at, do any more proofreading, anything that looks off, and then have it finally approved by the Board of Selectmen on the meeting on the 24th.
Anything else?
I could be here all night, but that's all I have to
Excellent.
speak about this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone like to read the warrants?
I'd make a motion to payroll warrant 1537A in the amount of $123.62.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Another motion is for payroll warrant 1537 in the amount of $234,871.14.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one is the payroll deduction 15-35 in the amount of $41,800.91.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next
This
one
way,
is the
that
payroll deduction
This way.
1535A in the amount of $135,764.97.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And the last warrant for this evening is a bill warrant W15-36 in the amount of $216,763.12.
Is there a second?
Se-
All those in favor?
Aye.
I think you missed, did you read 3 out of this folder?
I was reading what was on this.
Okay.
On the agenda. Yeah, that's good, on the agenda.
I was just going by the agenda, so I wouldn't miss any,
Yeah, they don't know what
because I know Heather's very, very thorough.
Efficient.
she's eating it.
I like that better though, right, on the warrant? So you should put them all on the warrant?
Yeah, as long as you check them up against the actuals, yeah, which we do.
Yeah. I like to find the
Make a motion to adjourn.
bill.
Nope,
for
not quite.
Electrical bill.
You have minutes to
This
approve.
is already done,
These are
right?
payroll
Yeah.
warrants, yeah.
Oh, no,
From,
do
we have
this.
executive session minutes to approve in open session. Has everyone had a chance to look at them? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the executive session minutes from February 24th, number 2, number 3, and number 6?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 24th, which was a regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Our next meeting is March 24th here in this room, and then April 7th and 21st. The annual town caucus is March 19th, Thursday at 7 o'clock in this room. Annual town election is May 4th. Anybody that has pulled papers for the annual town caucus, if they've not been returned with 20-some-odd signatures, you need to do that. I think the deadline is the 17th, 2 days before, but
That's correct.
so you need to get those in, otherwise it doesn't count. Annual town meeting is May 19th. We have a poll hearing on March 24th. And if I'm not wrong, we need to move into executive session. Heather, are we going into executive session one more time?
Didn't I?
While I
Yeah,
was
we need to-
absent, did we cover the earlier executive
No.
session? So we need to hit that one.
So we're going to move into executive session. We will not be coming back into executive session.
Open session. Open session.
We're not be coming back into open session. We're going to move in per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual by roll call vote.
Oh, I have 3 more.
There's
at the
more?
bottom.
Where?
Under executive sessions, number 9.
I don't have that.
9-1, yeah. Right here, down the bottom.
So there was litigation, so what are we talking
Oh,
about?
number 3 and number 6, sorry. To discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. And to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body by roll call vote.
McDougal, aye.
Calling on.
Moulton, aye.
Cheers, Ed.
Marks and aye.